I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step.
Just let go.
So I have my favorite guest in the whole wide world with me today, Mr. Richard Grewer.
Hi there.
Hello.
Oh, g'day.
So, oh gosh, we're husband and wife. We're co-workers. We're co-parenters, co-collaborators, whatever. And it's been a while since we recorded together, and we asked on social, what would you guys want to hear us talk about? The overwhelming consensus was talk about working together, how you do it, what it's like, so on and so forth. So
it's not enough that we work together. You want us to actually talk about working together?
It's a thing. It's a very complex dynamic, we must say. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of joking, saying, this could be the episode where it's working with your spouse in the same house type thing, especially when COVID started. And then we realized that was a lot of people, during the height of the quarantine.
Right.
So it's a lot. So we started to kind of think through, gosh, what would we say? What's the first thing that pops into mind when someone says, what's it like to work with your spouse?
Dynamic.
Dynamic. It is, especially with a 1-year-old.
Oh my gosh. And a couple of pups, yeah.
So,
yeah.
So we've been doing this now for a few years. If you're considering it, we don't want to be responsible for swaying you one way or the other.
We're not responsible for you guys.
However, we can share a couple of things that's helped us over the years, and we've learned the hard way. I think one of the things that is just going to happen naturally is you end up having to deal with overwhelm, because all of a sudden your personal stuff and your professional stuff and all the business stuff starts to pile into one place. And there's a lot all of a sudden that you're dealing with together at the same time. And it's like a cauldron of dynamics and very, very messy at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Messy most of the time, I would say. In a good and like negative and positive way, mostly positive. But it's like embrace the mess, as you say, and you hear a lot nowadays.
Yeah, it's a beautiful shit show, but it's a functioning, shit show that gets, I think, a little more refined by the day.
Right.
And we were talking about overwhelm and how this is a season of it right now, regardless if you're dealing with overwhelm in your professional world, with your job, with your own company, or even personally. There's enough underlying just dynamics going on that we are all kind of in this boat together. What I realized in thinking about this, Richard, is that when we have these tornadoes come through the home, the tornado of overwhelm, we tend to do the same things. Like, I started looking at it, and we don't think about these steps, but I do think there's a little bit of a system here. And we land in these steps in this process without realizing almost every time. If we would just commit at the front end in the mess part, like in the emotional this feels like too much part that we're going to do XYZ, it probably would negate a lot of emotion. But so
So you're saying that we have, unbeknownst to us, created our own system
for
of
how to deal with overwhelm.
how to deal with overwhelm. I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
And when I say overwhelm, I mean more from like an abundance of things to do and feeling a scarcity of time. So let's kind of first like define that, because overwhelm, I think, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, and there's all types.
And
So-
before you get into that, can I go back a step, and you kind of addressed it a little bit, like if you are thinking about working with your spouse, or if you do work with your spouse, we do not claim to have it right by any stretch. I think the trick is to like be always listening and always learning. And we would love, like, a preface all the. I mean, I'm really interested to know that we have a system. I feel quite accomplished, but we would love to know if you're also doing this at home. It could just be you're like a family member as well, and what works for you too. Because I think sharing is like shared knowledge is key. So, and without
Yeah.
further ado, here is our system.
Well, and this can work. This doesn't have to be just working with your spouse. I mean, this can be, I think, dealing, even if it's something that you apply to your own self, or with a team member or a family member, or whatever it may be. So first, I realized we tend to do this. We go from emotion to logic. So first, there are a lot of feelings, right? There's a little bit of a tornado of feelings, a lot of intensity, usually, of just emotion. And then we go to facts. So we do that. I mean, can you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't dare.
And it's oh my goodness. That's the corner turning moment, though, when we can get ourselves from feelings to facts. Because all of a sudden, logic comes in like a superhero
Right.
and saves us from falling into this cauldron.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. I mean, for sure. Quickly, things can get out of control if you just rely on the feeling side to try and manage a situation, or to like de-escalate a situation or solve a problem, whatever it might be. So when we actually kind of catch ourselves, it's a combination, probably a couple of things, and let me know if you think this is correct. But like it's a change of environment, change of state. Like either stop what you're doing, let's like go to a different room, or step outside. Okay, let's have a think about this, and then like what do we know to be true, what's factual, and then go from there. Would you think that's
Yes.
part of it too? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Like changing our state. And so once we get to that fact mode, things just feel easier, much more clear, not so like black or not so gray and kind of blurry. And all of a sudden, I think it goes from you versus me, because sometimes it can feel that way, or me
sure.
versus you, to us versus the situation. So I think the next step after kind of switching from the feelings to the facts is let's get organized. Let's get this all in one place. Let's start to feel a sense of perceived control, even if or control, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's just perceived. And that, at least for me, means removing distractions and getting everything either in a list or kind of in one place. And it's funny because I actually think about if I'm super stressed or overwhelmed about just life stuff, I'll find myself starting to like clean the refrigerator or just try and get the external environment, organized and cleaned. And that's where
You
I think
definitely
for
do that.
business too, we do that. Let's
Yeah.
get a list going. For me, it's like the list is the go-to.
Yeah, we disagree on how bullet points should be listed out. You're a triangle girl that needs to be filled in, and I'm a just cross that thing out, like put a line through it. But we
do.
agree that getting organized in lists.
But and we'll get to this, but one of our new shiny tools that keeps us from making this long, overwhelming list, because then all of a sudden you're overwhelmed by the list, is Monday.com. But let's just shelve that for a second because we're not quite there. But it has been like the ultimate amazing grace. But getting organized and removing distractions. So for me, sometimes that's just closing out of tabs. It could be, or we refer to it sometimes as let's remove variables. Like let's, put the dogs outside if they're barking. Like anything we can do to kind of normalize the situation, the better. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. For me, being able to design my own day is a non-negotiable. As many of you know, I'm a bit of a time management nerd. So when I find something that allows me to be more efficient and more effective, I want to share it with everyone. So here's the scoop. I have a new tool in my productivity tool belt, and I'm a bit obsessed. It's Monday.com. My team and I have never felt more organized, and I have a new sense of perceived control. My to-do list is no longer the boss of me. I feel more in control because every project, initiative, date, and task is captured and organized in one place. And my team is in the loop and involved every step of the way. With Monday.com, it's like I have a brand new operating system. There's no long list, and everything has its own home, its own deadline, its own team member that's assigned and associated, and it's color coordinated. We all have multifaceted jobs and businesses. There are many components to my business, and each and every one of them has its own compartment. Each division is always one click away. For example, my team and I have a dedicated board for this very podcast. Did you know there are 28 steps involved in getting one podcast to air? It's the same exact process every time. And it's a system. We have the various key steps mapped out as micro tasks. And this allows for my team and I to stay in lockstep every step of the way. With Monday.com, I can zoom out and see the big picture, a roadmap view from 30,000 feet. And a moment later, I can zoom in and focus on a specific micro task within a project, within a division of the company. I could go on and on about the features that Monday.com offers, one of which is I've built my social media content calendar inside of Monday.com. I finally have one that I actually use, that I like, and it's embedded into my overall Google Calendar. Another feature that I love is the Google Doc integration. You know I love a good spreadsheet. I can pull them into Monday.com and edit them right there versus having 97 tabs open on my computer. If how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, then I can't think of anything more important than using the time in our days wisely. Head to Monday.com if you want a free trial. And let me know on social media how it goes for you. Shoot me a DM. We can swap tips and tricks.
Absolutely. I mean, and just to give you, I know you kind of brushed over that a little bit, but when I first met Amy Jo many a moon ago, she and my sort of first was like, I spotted her open computer.
You were spying.
Not with any intent
Snoopy.
to like delve into your browsing history. But I think it was when I was first learning about cookies, and I wanted to know how the hell do I get cookies out of a computer? It's great, I love cookies. Anyway, she would have a million tabs open. I had never seen anything like it before. So for Amy to be saying, I close tabs now, I just don't want to understate how big that actually is for those of you playing at home.
But like an open tab on your computer is like an open tab in your brain. And that's just wasting energy, right? You need to close that out and focus your energy, right? It's a thing. And that's where, so getting into like normalizing that environment, distractions, notifications, a story's popping in about a former coworker of mine. She was actually an employee at my first company and like star up and coming amazing team member. And she came to me one Friday afternoon and she was in tears. And I'm like, what's up? What's going on? And she just said, I'm so overwhelmed. I've been working the last few weekends. I've got so much to do. There's no way to get it all done. I'm just so absolutely overwhelmed. So we went into the conference room and had this whiteboard. And I said, okay, let's just start one thing at a time. Tell me. And she would tell me these things and I'd put them line item by line item on this whiteboard.
List. Yeah.
I was making a list. Yes. And so we're going from feelings to facts, and all of a sudden we're getting organized. And we did. We went through one by one. And yes, she did have a lot. But what we realized in analyzing every one of those things, those items, is that none of them had to be done over the weekend. And so that logic kind of mode, it basically allowed her to enjoy her weekend. And she just realized, yeah, I thought this, I felt this way. But the truth was actually none of that was a fire. None of those things were a fire that had to be put out. They could be scheduled into the next week and or delegated a little differently. So yeah, it's amazing what happens when we get organized and we can see the bigger picture, like more of a view from 30,000 feet. And that's one of the things. So that's kind of our step 2, by the way. So just so you know, Richard.
Well, thank you.
What would step 3 be? So, I mean, this is something you are so good at doing. And I think it's a superpower of yours. And that is chipping away at huge to-do items, whether it's initiative, a launch, a task, a big, huge project, and just taking it one step at a time, little and often, right? So little and often, and what needs to happen next? And then what? And then what? And you're so good at letting yourself put one step in front of the other and not get overwhelmed by the whole staircase. How do you do that?
Well, it's a good question, Amy. I'm glad you asked. Well, thank you. First of all, a lot of it comes down to it's really my professional background is more in sort of project management, construction, things like that. So that was always about like what's happening next, what's the timeline, what are the little intricacies that every little detail has to be thought about. Because if you miss one thing, then a whole house can fall down. So that's the starting point. But I think just to kind of take that up a little bit of a level in terms of whoever you work with, whether you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, or you're working in a corporate environment or whatever it might be, whoever you're working with, whether it be your spouse, family member, whoever, one thing that we have established between the two of us is that Amy is excellent at that top level completed project view, 60,000 feet, like what does it look like at the very end? And I'm not so great at that, but I'm really good at like the what needs to happen now, and then what happens after that, and like that's where we complement each other. So it's finding within your skill sets, what are your complementary things in your toolkit, I guess. So I think that's just kind of, and it's me. You say like where how do I do that? It's more like that's just kind of where my background is. But that's the best way is just to break a big project down into small manageable chunks, and then break those small chunks down even further into like what's the very next step. And we've had so many renegades on the podcast that say the same thing. Like just take what's the biggest, or I say biggest baby step, but what's that baby step that you can do, right then and there. I think if Christy Wright said that, it always kind of rings in my head. What's that very next thing you can do? And your momentum gathers.
Sorry, your chair's really creaky.
I know, I kind of thought about this, but
that's okay.
I'm getting animated.
That's good.
Yeah.
Animated is good. So that little and often, like we have a big launch coming up in September, something we've never done. It's an initiative that feels gigantic. And of course, it's always scary when you haven't done it before. So that to me is like, oh, but you break it down in a way that just makes it feel like, no, this is just a bunch of little tasks put together, because it is at the end of the day. It's like, okay, well, and then you've got another one tomorrow and another one tomorrow, and they compound over time. And you have this thing that you created or built. So I think the other thing too about like getting organized and removing variables is what can be striked from the list. Not everything actually is essential.
Right.
So I think that's another thing that we've learned over time, what can go. And that's where, we talk about it all the time. Anything is possible, but everything is not.
I mean, especially with Lincoln as well, that extra dynamic of him in the household, things just have to you have to get him off the list. It's like, that is not important. That is not going to get us any closer to any particular outcome of our family or our family goals or business goals or whatever. Like, it's got to go.
Yep, absolutely. Like, becomes kind of a non-factor. And then you wonder before you became parents what you did with all these non-essential things.
Right.
Maybe they were essential at the time.
And even for non-parents as well. I mean, it's obviously valuable to question. You don't want to spend too much time on it, but questioning the things on the list, like, does that get me closer to the outcome that I'm working towards?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that has been a huge tool for us, and It's clear, from the times I've talked about Monday.com on the podcast and shared that they're a partner of ours, after working and trying out their platform for several months, we really have been able to create more space within our team and within our days that we didn't even realize was a possibility. And that's because we now have everything in one place. We know who's on first. And we're able to communicate as a team. Like, for example, Nick, who edits and produces this show.
Hi, Nick.
Hello, Nick. It's the same process over and over, but there are a lot of steps. And so we're in lockstep with Nick. Files are being shared within Monday. And of course, not only correspondence, but like we can edit our Google Docs and our spreadsheets within Monday. It's not another tab that has to be opened. We've got our systems, we've got our procedures, and everything just turns out into being these small tasks that are manageable. And what's cool is I'm just like totally on my Monday soapbox, but it really has, I feel like, changed my life personally and professionally, because everything like rents space in your head, right? Everything that's on your mind. And when you can compartmentalize and actually focus, you become so much more efficient and effective. And so back to kind of the analogy of tabs open in your mind with Monday.com, you have the ability to put every division of your company or just, different sections and areas of focus within your company into their own areas. So it's not like one long project management list of tasks and things that have to get done. Everything kind of has its own compartment and cubby, like in kindergarten, right? So with our business, obviously we have the podcast, we have partnerships and speaking and books and education programs, and that can become social media overwhelming if we just let it all reside in the same place.
Your head, basically. If it all just hangs up in there, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a sense of perceived control and peace when you know it's all captured in these different areas. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but one of the things that has been such just a relief is finding a social media content calendar system and setup that works. And that for me is Monday.com. It works to where I actually have it built in a content calendar into Monday, which is a solution I've been looking for like 12 years. I've tried everything, and for clients, for ourselves. And so it syncs with my Google Calendar, and it's just, everything's just organized. It's like Marie Kondo kind of just landed in our laptop.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. I mean, for personal and business, I mean, it's one of those things where you can get it's accountability for sure. So, like Amy said, you know who's on first, but you have due dates, and you know, it just gets it out of your head. One thing I love about it so much, the things that can cause a lot of overwhelm, is having a lot of to-dos or ideas or whatever it might be, just kind of floating up around in your headspace. And I know for me, certainly balancing between like some days where it's like full hands-on with Link and other days where more spending time on the business, things just can fall through because I'm not in that headspace all the time. So having something where those ideas can be captured and those tasks can be captured quickly, and then it can just be forgotten about until the next time I come back to my laptop or whatever, it's just priceless.
It is. And there's a sense of accomplishment and productivity when you can see it, and you can literally change a status to done or take it off your plate and put it in your coworker's plate.
In a very devious way. Like, yeah, that feels good.
It's back in your court. And it's drastically decreased the number of emails that we send internally. We have a pretty small team, but usually, we use it with Slack in conjunction as a complement to Slack. Just all these forms of communication. If you don't have your kind of protocol or way of operating down and everybody's on the same page, it can just be a lot of notifications all the time. Like, and you're texting, you're emailing, and you're slacking. And so that's one of the things we've been more diligent about is how to communicate with each other and to over communicate in the areas we decide and the channels that we use to communicate. So that's pretty cool too. So what's one thing that you didn't know, or maybe that's been the biggest surprise about working together?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Or maybe just an honest fact that it's like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the honest fact is that, like, it's, as I said before, where it's not, you can't master it, right? Because the dynamics of being married, as well as the dynamics of working together and understanding the differences you have in a working capacity, and then the differences you have in a marriage capacity, and sometimes the blurred lines of, like, you get the water gets a little murky. So I wouldn't say that's a surprise. It's just a thing to be mindful of, and like it takes that additional work, but it is absolutely worth it. The most surprising thing, I think, enjoying the wins. Like the wins can be more meaningful than wins you might have in a environment where you're working for someone else. I mean, this comes back to entrepreneurship and being self-employed and those kind of things too. But I think for the wins that we can share together, feel like they're a bit more sticky because of the environment that we have. And so I don't know if that's a surprise, but that's just one thing that sticks out.
yeah, no, that's true. They're deeper, probably, maybe
Right.
just a little more. Something that we have created, which this is a tip that we learned the hard way. We do have some no-fly zones. So, like the other day, I'm thinking about it was probably like 6:24 a.m. and I was still in my pajamas. You're still in your pajamas. Lincoln's, getting ready for breakfast. We're getting him ready for breakfast. He doesn't exactly
He's
cook his
making us some pancakes, yeah.
food. And sure enough, I get an email and I hop into work mode and start talking about it. And we had barely had a cup of coffee yet.
Right. And Lincoln's in a season of not sleeping very well at the moment, so that is enhanced.
Right.
And morning conversations.
We do alternate nights. So one of us is like on
Link watch.
Link watch one night, and then we flip flop. So it's a thing. So we and you caught me. You totally were like, "Hey, it's 6:24. Let's just pause until
Can
at
we
least
talk?
8 a.m. or
Right.
maybe even 7 a.m." And I was like, "Yep, my bad. Sorry." And that's the thing, is like the boundaries don't really exist. Everything is fluid, and so you have to be pretty diligent about where time and energy is being focused. I think Lincoln's helped.
Oh, for sure he has.
He's a priority, and
Right.
when we're with him, we don't want to be talking about work and business.
And sometimes you have to as well. But it's the ability to, like, we also can have him with us, which is nice.
So we really subscribe to work-life integration versus separation. Sometimes we wish we had a little bit more like boundaries and compartmentalize, but a lot of it is being self-aware.
And understanding what works for you in your situation too.
Yeah.
Because everyone's situation is a little different. Everyone's, whether you're a parent or non-parent, everyone's situation is different.
Yes, absolutely. And for those of you who might be listening thinking, gosh, we've been thinking about working together, you and your spouse or partner, whoever. So Richard and I have complementary, I would say, personalities and skill sets.
I would say that too. Again, I dare say otherwise.
Oh my goodness.
I'm kidding. I'm here for comic relief, everybody.
So that, I mean, you can either look at it as clashing or complementary. And so I think it's just a very intentional choice where sometimes we do clash because we just are so different.
Yep.
But that's also where the big upside comes. So like looking, and I know all the strengths finders and all those things are popular in Enneagram stuff, but it actually, they're there for a reason. We've done something called Colby, and it kind of takes into account personality and performance. And so it's kind of soft and hard skills and traits, and we have pretty complementary Colbys. Yeah.
Complimentary Colbys. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, for example, I'm a 10 in what's called quick start innovation. So if I have an idea, like, I've already started. And so very quick, that's as high as it goes. And it can be a disadvantage in many cases because sometimes a quick start is a false start. But usually I'm just, let's try, let's get going, let's start experimenting. Why not? Why not now? Like that's the whole essence of my being. And you're not a 10 in quick start.
I am not. I don't remember what I am, but I am not a 10.
Maybe a 1. No,
No,
I think you're a 3.
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum for
Yeah,
sure.
I think you're a 3. But for example, or maybe
But that
even
doesn't
a
mean I'm slow.
4.
It just means that I like to take more time before I start.
Right. And we don't want too much of a delta because then it's very hard to bridge it. But you also don't want to overlap necessarily. So that's something to take into consideration if you're considering working together. And then also just goals. Like, what are you looking to get out of that relationship as partners in business?
Yeah, core values, family core values. Like, what are you working towards? And I think that's the thing. And we haven't always done this, but like recently, that we can come back to if we feel like we're getting off track or we're having a bad day, we're clashing or whatever. It's like, okay, look at the bigger picture. What have we agreed to be working towards as a family? That's the common goal. There's the commonalities there.
Yeah.
Always bring yourself back to that.
Yep, 100%. And I mean, we have our little tiny tips and tricks and hacks, like the 20-second rule we still use.
We do.
So if you didn't listen to that episode, we encourage you to find it. This has nothing to do with even working together, but it works well, even if you do. And that's, where if one spouse says something that they immediately realize they shouldn't have said and they want to take it back, you can say 20-second rule, and that kind of grants you the permission to kind of take back what you said, and you have to say it within 20 seconds, and the other partner has to accept it, and then it's over. Like, it's over. No more conversation. Moving on, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm into that it's over part. Sometimes you're not always
Sometimes it turns into a 20-minute rule after a little tiff.
Right. Can sometimes be extended to eye rolls and body movements as well.
And you can't keep score of 20-second rules because that's not going to work. So just to recap, as we look at the system, the unofficial method of dealing with overwhelm. So move from feelings to facts. Then number 2, get organized, whether that's making lists, put everything in one place. For us, Monday.com is usually involved. It's always involved with the business, and we use it personally as well. Remove the distractions, right? And then number 3 is little and often. So taking those tasks and one by one, right? So we're not doing not making lists of big, huge items that are actually 20 tasks in one. Just start chipping away at that little and often, one thing at a time.
Right. And it sounds like like MFD, but
I don't know if people know what MFD is.
Mother flippin' duh, like obvious. It sounds obvious and common sensey, and it is in a lot of ways. But when you're in a position of when you're feeling overwhelmed and that whatever projects or things happening in life are, and you've got this
like
outside,
a stop, drop, and roll situation. You feel like something's on fire. I know it's not the same, but kind of like you need to remember. So it's like facts over feelings, list, little and often.
Yeah. And in parentheses, stop, drop, and roll.
But you know what I mean? You know how our brains go? It's like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do.
I totally hear.
We need to facts over feelings, get organized, list, little and often.
Yeah, totally.
I'm trying to put my marketing hat on. Should we give an update on Lincoln? It's been so long since
let's do it. I think that's great. I think that would be cool.
All right. So Lincoln is he's 14 months.
In a few days.
Gosh, corrected. He 13, 12, 11 months.
Yeah.
So he, was born 3 months early. So he's kind of got 2 birth dates. And he's so rad. He's just healthy, and he's like a giggle monster, almost walking.
Yeah. He's such a joy. He laughs at literally everything. So quarantine has restricted our abilities to get haircuts, and we are both quite hairy people. So he pulls on our hair and loves it. So that's one of his things he's into at the moment. But he's great. He's crawling. He can't be far away from walking. He gets more horsepower in his butt every day. He's just the best thing since sliced bread.
He so is, and loves being outside and like all the things. Every day it's something new.
Yeah, he's a boy.
He's just Dada, but he calls me Dada.
He knows who you are. He just hasn't kind of formulated those, that
I
word
swear in a dream he said pizza before he said mama, which we've never fed him pizza. I don't know
yet.
why.
No, but we do eat a fair bit of we make our own, but we
like our
eat a fair
own
bit of pizza.
Anyway, so that's an update on Link. Thank you for following along that journey. If you've been on the ride over the last year, it's been a season of curved balls. Nothing like being born and headed straight to the NICU, and then your first birthday is a pandemic. And we went on a parade, a pandemic parade, I guess you'd call it, for his birthday.
That's right.
Where we got balloons, put them in the car, and we just went around to friends and family, and they waved. So we'll have a lot of stories for that little guy when he gets older.
Yeah, he's had a pretty interesting, adventurous start to his little life. So
Yeah.
it's been fun.
Well, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
It's been a while.
I hope to do it again if the people on the social media channels are into it. But if they're not, then maybe this is the last time. So sayonara. No.
Let us know. Yes. So hopefully this was helpful, but we can always take the conversation online if you have more questions. And thank you again for your time. We're signing off for now. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?